Hello and welcome to part 2 of the Jungling Paths video series for Season 8, where we will go over all the jungle paths that you should know about based on the type of jungler you are playing. There are now 4 main classes of junglers. The level 2 junglers are currently the most dominant junglers in the game as they have a massive power spike at level 2, allowing them to gank, take scuttle crabs, and fight other junglers very effectively. The level 3 junglers are usually bruisers that get their power spike at level 3 that allows them to gank effectively. The level 6 junglers are a class of junglers that get their most powerful ganking capabilities at level 6. These are often tanks, but they can also be assassins. The carry junglers have mediocre ganking capabilities compared to the previous classes, but they scale well with itemization and deal a ton of damage late into the game. Now let's dive into the jungle paths, focusing on being a blue side jungler. Our first jungle path is the level 2 cheese. This is where you take the red buff and head into the bottom side river. The idea here is you're trying to secure the scuttle crab as quickly as you can, but it does take a while for it to spawn, so you're going to be keeping an eye on the mid lane and the bottom lane for potential ganks. The level 2 Scuttle Cheese is an extension of this path where you go from the red buff, head into the bottom side river, take the scuttle crab, and then you gank the mid lane, preceded by going for the top side scuttle crab and then going back to take your blue buff to reach level 3. This path is the quickest, dirtiest way to get both crabs and a gank out by a level 2 jungler. Our next jungle path is the delayed level 2 cheese. You go from the red buff to the Raptors and then to the bottom river to clear the scuttle crab, which will definitely have spawned by then. After that, you can gank the mid lane or the bottom lane, or you can even invade the enemy jungle to catch the enemy jungler while he's low on health, or pick up some free camps while he's on the other side of the map. Our next jungle path is the Double.Buff Clear. You're going from your red buff straight to your blue buff into the top side river, where you can take the scuttle crab and gank the mid lane or the top lane. This path is great for junglers who are paranoid about losing one of their buffs to an invading jungler. Next we have the level 3 Scuttle Clear. This is going from the red buff to the wolf camp to the blue buff for the top side scuttle crab, and the idea here is you're going to take the least amount of damage possible while reaching level 3. The only problem is it's not guaranteed you'll reach level 3, as you might run into the enemy jungler in the top side river and it's hard to say which one of you will get the scuttle crab. The guaranteed jungle path to reach level 3 is to go for the red buff, the wolves, the blue buff, and the gromp. If you are an AOE jungler, you can do Raptors instead of gromp, but you might have to do the blue buff sooner along this path in order to have the mana to clear the wolf camp and the Raptors. Next we have the top side clear. This path is basically clearing everything inside your jungle starting at the red buff except for the Krugs. This path is not a very good one as it leaves you at very low health inside your jungle when the enemy jungler might be on the top side of the map. Do not use this path if the enemy jungler started on the bottom side of the map. Now before we dive into the specialized jungle paths for the blue side, let's talk about why these jungle paths exist. Now let's suppose that the enemy jungler is starting on the bottom side of his map, and you know this by noticing that the enemy bottom lane is late in arriving to lane and the enemy top lane arrives on time. The question you need to ask yourself is, what are the different combinations of jungle camps that the enemy jungler can take before he goes for the nearby scuttle crab? The answer is that after the first camp, the second camp, and possibly the third camp, he's still on the bottom side of the map. But by the time he's doing his 4th camp or 5th camp, he's definitely on the other side of the jungle. What this means for you is that while the enemy jungler is at his 1st, 2nd, and possibly 3rd camp, the bottom side scuttle crab is dangerous. While the enemy jungler is at his 3rd, 4th, or 5th camp, the top side scuttle crab is dangerous. Or to put it another way, the top side scuttle crab is safe early on, and the bottom side scuttle crab is safe if it's up at all much later. This brings us to our first advanced jungle path, the top Scuttle Crab Rush. This is a blue side jungler starting at his bottom side red buff and taking the top side scuttle crab while the enemy jungler is still on the bottom side of the map. From here, the jungler can go for a full reverse sweep clear of the entire jungle, reaching level 4. This path can be very effective for level 3, level 6, and carry junglers, but should not be carried out in its entirety by level 2 junglers, as that wastes their early game potential. The next advanced jungle path, the red to red rush, is a much more aggressive invade of the enemy jungle. In this path, the blue side jungler starts at his bottom side red buff, then heads straight to the enemy red buff while the enemy jungler is still in his bottom side jungle. After that, you take the top side scuttle crab on the way out, and then you have the option of doing a reverse sweep of the entire jungle to reach level 4. This path is extremely strong on any jungler that can clear camps quickly. A much faster variant of this jungle path is the blue to red rush, where you start at the top side blue buff and then go for the enemy red buff, grabbing the scuttle crab on the way back out. The next advanced jungle path is extremely aggressive and requires monitoring the top lane and the mid lane, as you will be going for a late invade into the enemy jungle starting at the enemy jungler's red buff. After taking the red buff on the way back out, the jungler takes the scuttle crab, the blue buff, and the gromp to hit level 3. While this path can work well on level 3, level 6, and carry junglers, it is not recommended on level 2 junglers. Next we have some unexpected jungle paths from the blue side jungler. The first path is the blue Scuttle Rush. You're going to be starting at your topside blue buff and then rush to take the topside Scuttle Crab. This path is extremely safe if the enemy jungler is starting on the bottom side of the map, and you can do this without a leash. The next unusual jungle path is the topside invade. The blue side jungler starts at his blue buff, takes the gromp, takes the top side Scuttle Crab, and then heads into the top side of the enemy jungle, ready to fight the enemy jungler. This path should only be used by duelist junglers. Next we have the reverse AOE Level 3 clear, where an AOE jungler starts at his topside blue buff, takes the wolves, the raptors, and the red buff to hit level 3. After that, you're going to head into the bottom side river to take the Scuttle Crab if it is available, and then you can gank the mid lane or the bottom lane at a time when everyone expects you to be on the top side of the map. A variant of this path is the reverse single target level 3 clear, where you take the blue buff, the gromp, the wolves, and the red buff, ending up in the bottom side river under the same set of conditions. Our next path is the reverse full sweep. This is a jungler starting at his topside blue buff, then clearing the entire topside and bottom side jungle. While this path will allow you to reach level 4, you must keep your bottom side pixel brush warded to make sure that your bottom side jungle is not getting invaded. Our next unusual jungle path is the level 3 pseudo clear. As a red side jungler, you will start at the red buff, clear the raptors, clear part of the wolf camp, and then take the blue buff to hit level 3. The idea behind this path is to reach level 3 as efficiently as possible, clearing no more than necessary in the jungle to reach level 3. There is also a variant of the jungle path where you can clear part of the raptors and all of the wolves to reach level 3. These two paths are needlessly complex, and I do not recommend them if you're just learning the jungle. Now there are two extremely difficult paths to reach level 3, and the value of them is that no one expects you to do them. The first path is red buff to Krugs, the bottom side Scuttle Crab. The Krugs provide so much experience that you will reach level 3 by clearing these three camps. And in case the Scuttle Crab is not available, you have the option of going red buff to Raptors, the Krugs, to get level 3. Do not try this on any level 2 jungler or any jungler that does not have sustain. The reason this path is so good is that the Krugs provides a ton of golden experience, and by clearing it early, you will get the opportunity to clear it again when it respawns, allowing you to reach level 6. Now let's dig into the jungle paths for the red side jungler, and suppose the blue side jungler is starting at his bottom side red buff because you notice the enemy bottom lane is late to arrive to lane and the enemy top lane arrives on time. The question you need to ask yourself is, what are the different combinations of jungle camps that the enemy jungler can take before he goes for the nearby Scuttle Crab? The answer is that after the first camp and possibly the second camp, he's still on the bottom side of the map. But by the time he's doing his third, fourth, or fifth camp, he's definitely on the top side of his jungle. What this means for you is that while the enemy jungler is at his first or second camp, the bottom side Scuttle Crab is very dangerous. While the enemy jungler is at his third, fourth, or fifth camp, the top side Scuttle Crab is dangerous. Once again, what this means is that the top side Scuttle Crab is safe early on, while the bottom side Scuttle Crab, if it's up at all, is safe later. Keeping that in mind, our first standard jungle path for the red side jungler is to go from the blue buff into the bottom side river. The idea being to take the Scuttle Crab or gank the mid lane or the bottom lane, whichever comes first. Another variant of this path is the blue to gromp to bot side Scuttle Crab. This time the Scuttle Crab will definitely be up by the time you get down there. Both of these jungle paths are bad and should not be attempted unless you are stronger than the enemy jungler with his red buff. There is also the buff to buff clear for the paranoid junglers that do not want to lose their red buff. At higher ranks, this does put you at risk of running into the enemy jungler if he goes for the red to red invade. If you do make it into the topside river, you can take the Scuttle Crab and then look to gank the top lane or the mid lane. Once again, there is also the level 3 Scuttle Clear on the red side of the jungle, and it is just as unreliable as it was on the blue side of the jungle for hitting level 3. If you run into the enemy jungler on the top side of the map, it's not guaranteed that you'll get the Scuttle Crab. And once again, there's also the guaranteed level 3 clear taking the blue buff, the gromp, the wolves, and the red buff. There is also a variant of this path for AOE junglers where you can do wolves and raptors instead. This path is actually much better on the red side because you start with the blue buff and you'll have all the mana that you need to use your abilities on the wolf camp and the raptors. Lastly, we have the full sweep jungle clear for the red side jungler. Starting with the blue buff, you're going to be spamming all of your abilities to clear the gromp, the wolves, the raptors, the red buff, and the Krugs. And while this path can be good, there is a very high risk of any non-tank jungler coming into your topside jungle to steal your jungle camps. I do not recommend any of these jungle paths for the red side jungler unless you absolutely need the blue buff. The reason is that if you are playing a non-aggressive jungler against a early game duelist jungler with a lot of experience, there's a very high chance that you might meet him inside the top side of your jungle, and he's going to have the red buff while you have the blue buff. This is not a fight that you want to take. Keeping that in mind, let's move on to the advanced jungle paths for the red side jungler. Our first advanced path is the level 2 cheese. This is essentially a mirror of what you saw on the blue side. As a level 2 duelist jungler, you're going to be taking the red buff, then head into the top side river to take the Scuttle Crab and gank the top lane or the mid lane. Once again, this extends into the level 2 Scuttle Cheese, starting at your top side red buff, taking the top side Scuttle Crab, ganking the mid lane, going for the bottom side Scuttle Crab, then going for your blue buff. Note that you are unlikely to get the bottom side Scuttle Crab against a duelist jungler, as he's likely to have taken it for himself. There is also the delayed level 2 cheese where you take the red buff, go for the raptors, then take the top side Scuttle Crab. The benefit of this clear is that it deprives the enemy jungler of access to your raptors should they choose to invade your topside jungle. Next, we have the reverse Double.Buff Clear. This path comes in handy against junglers that invade your bottom side jungle with a red buff. They will be surprised to find that your blue buff is still there. If you are a duelist jungler, let them start the blue buff and then kill them once they're low on health. Next we have the bottom side clear. Start at your red buff, do your Raptors, then clear the entire bottom side of your jungle to hit level 3. This path is strong against enemy junglers who are stronger than you and start on the bottom side of the map, working their way towards the top side. Our next advanced jungle path is the top side Scuttle Rush. You'll start with your blue buff, then work your way towards the top side of the map to take the top side Scuttle Crab while the enemy jungler is still on the bottom side of the map. This path is the safest way to secure a Scuttle Crab for yourself when facing a strong level 2 jungler. Our next advanced path is the level 2 counter cheese. When you're going as a level 2 duelist jungler against a level 2 duelist jungler, the enemy jungler thinks that he has an advantage because he has the red buff while he expects that you will have the blue buff when you arrive in the bottom side river. By starting at the red buff and heading to the bottom side river through the brush, you will see the enemy jungler before he has a chance to see you, allowing you to get the jump on him. If the enemy jungler is not there, you can take the Scuttle Crab, gank the mid lane, gank the bottom lane, or even invade the enemy jungle, taking the enemy Raptors and Krugs. The invade is viable on level 3, 6, and carry junglers, but do not waste your time invading so deep on a level 2 jungler. Our next advanced jungle path is an extremely aggressive invade of the enemy jungle, exploiting the fact that the enemy jungler is strongly incentivized to start at his bottom side red buff. Keeping an eye on the mid lane and top lane, you'll go for a late invade on the enemy blue buff, taking their blue buff, possibly their gromp, then taking the Scuttle Crab on your way back out towards your red buff to hit level 3. Our next advanced jungle path is the bot side level 3 clear. Starting at the blue buff, you're going to take the gromp, the wolves, then come back down to do the Scuttle Crab to hit level 3. And from here you can go for a gank on the mid lane or the bottom lane while they expect you to be on the top side of the map. This path is highly dependent on getting the Scuttle Crab, so make sure you only use it against junglers who are weaker duelists, as they are very unlikely to risk a fight with you at level 2 over the Scuttle Crab. Our next advanced jungle path is the Pseudo level 3 clear, which is the same as it was on the blue side of the map, doing a partial clear of the Raptors or wolves, reaching level 3 at the blue buff. Once again, these two jungle paths are needlessly complex and I do not recommend them if you're just learning the jungle. Lastly, the red Krugs Raptor start is an extremely unusual path to level 3 for the red side jungler. From here you can go into the bottom side river to see if the Scuttle Crab is available. If you do manage to pick it up, it'll give you enough health and mana to do an invade of the enemy jungle, taking the enemy jungler's Raptors and Krugs as well, putting them extremely behind. This path is best used on level 3 and carry junglers with fast clears and high sustain. Do not attempt this clear with a level 2 duelist or a level 6 tank jungler. As a final note, as a blue side or red side jungler, when you're facing a strong level 2 duelist jungler or a level 3 jungler that might invade, it's very important to have a late ward placed into the pixel brush in front of the enemy jungler's red buff. The idea being that if the enemy jungler chooses to invade your jungle with his red buff, you will see it coming and you have the option of breaking your jungle path to clear out the opposite side of the enemy jungler's jungle while he clears out the opposite side of your jungle. That wraps up all the different jungle paths that you need to know as a jungler to get by in Season 8. If you love these videos and want to see more, do hit the subscribe button and use the bell icon to be notified on when the next video comes out. If you want to improve your in-game decision making, take a look through the playlist on the left, and if you want to learn some league strategies, take a look through the playlist on the right. You can also follow on Twitter, and if you want to support this channel directly, do click on the Patreon link to support this channel.